The iron bar, now adorned with a warm brown exterior, left Xuanyu astounded. He marveled at how it had transformed so beautifully, almost unrecognizable from its former self. His mouth hung open in shock as he realized that this was truly a miracle of sorts. He could hardly believe that this remarkable feat had been the pinnacle of Uncle's abilities. Turning to Lei with genuine admiration, he praised his extraordinary skill and expressed how truly impressive the transformation had been. His mind raced with the thought that it wouldn't have been surprising if Uncle could effortlessly demolish a warship with his bare hands, given his clear strength in combat and other areas. He then eagerly asked his uncle to teach him the art of forging. Lei's smile broadened at the request, and with a warm gesture he pinched Xuanyu's cheek and reassured him that whenever Xuanyu visited, he would be there to guide him. Xuanyu's gratitude was palpable as he exclaimed his delight. He felt thrilled at the prospect of learning from such a skilled mentor. As the training session began, Lei turned to Xuanyu and suggested they start with the basics. He elaborated that mastering the fundamentals of wielding a hammer was crucial for crafting a superior piece, and emphasized that understanding the technique was essential. As he held the hammer in his hand, he stressed that starting with this tool would help him harness his natural strength. With a firm stance, he hurled the hammer with impressive speed and instructed Xuanyu to observe before trying it himself. Xuanyu nodded in agreement as he felt determined to follow his uncle's example. As he mimicked Lei's movements, he reflected on his uncle's precise strike. He felt warmth in his shins and realized that his uncle's gentle guidance was helping him refine his power. He threw the hammer with the same forceful intent as his uncle. Lei observed his strength and smiled with pride. He admired how quickly Xuanyu learnt and how naturally he understood things. As the day started to end, Xuanyu sat down as he looked very tired. His uncle saw how worn out he was and suggested that he should get something to eat and come back the next day. Xuanyu said his uncle to come back the next day, and Lei patted his head kindly and promised he would be there. He told him that he was on vacation and promised to stay with him during this time. Lan Xuanyu's schedule was packed all of a sudden. Mornings were dedicated to his classes, while afternoons were reserved for a long 2-hour study session in interstellar warship piloting under the guidance of Tang Zhenhua. Each day he then headed to the Blacksmith Association, where Tang Lei appeared shortly after his arrival. Meanwhile, Yang Yingming found himself wondering about the absence of Xuanyu's visit, and his curiosity grew as days slipped away unnoticed. In the blink of an eye, 2 weeks passed. As Lei sat on a crane and looked over the city below, a voice crackled through his communicator. The message was clear. If he didn't come back right away, they would have to quit. His assistant was angry about his long absence. He had promised just 3 days off, but he had been gone for 2 weeks. She reminded him that she had to turn down many jobs and deal with big penalties because of his absence. She was at her limit and couldn't keep going under these conditions. Lei felt the impact of her words, understood her frustration, and promised he would return soon. He told her not to give up and assured her that he would be back shortly. Inside the forging room, Xuanyu walked in and looked around for his uncle. He spotted a letter on the table. He opened it and started reading. The letter, written by Uncle Lei, said that it was time for him to go home. He promised he would visit again when he could, and told Xuanyu to take care of himself. With these farewell words, Tang Lei's absence was felt strongly as he left behind the familiar crane and a sense of emptiness for Xuanyu. In the vibrant, bright city on home planet, at the top of a luxurious apartment building, a woman sat with a glass of wine. She vented her anger over Tang Lei's unexplained 2-week absence and wondered if he might have been seeing someone else. Her thoughts drifted to the possibility that all her hard work had been for nothing. As she staggered towards the sofa in a tipsy state, she threw herself onto it and slammed her hand against the cushions. Her annoyance grew as she exclaimed how her enthusiasm for managing his accounts had disappeared, despite it being her favorite task. She declared him the worst. Lei, seated on the opposite sofa, reflected on his own shortcomings with a touch of self-doubt. The woman noticed him and, shocked by his unexpected presence, stood up and headed towards the door. Her frustration was evident as she told him that, despite her hard work on his behalf, he seemed indifferent to his career. She pointed out that he had disappeared for 2 weeks, so she announced her resignation and suggested he find another agent. Her anger escalated when she thought he wasn't even trying to convince her to stay. She anxiously rushed back to him and demanded to know if he had already found a replacement and if he was planning to throw her away. Li calmly observed her and checked her forehead for signs of fever, and as he found none, he wondered why she was so upset. He told her that if she quit, he would also leave, and he insisted that any penalties should be paid from his own money. She reacted with disbelief, questioned how such an arrangement could be made, and expressed her inability to handle the situation. She then asked what he had been doing for the past 2 weeks. He explained that he had been occupied with the boy they had met at the Heaven Luo Planet concert, who had now been admitted to Shrek Academy. He recounted how he had spent several days teaching the boy how to forge, which had caused his delay in returning. She absorbed this new information about him and was amazed that he could forge, and that he had been neither punished nor expelled from Shrek Academy. He reassured her that the academy staff had been kind and had allowed him to stay, and that he had some knowledge of forging. Her frustration melted away as she smiled and asked if he was hungry and offered to prepare something for him. She also suggested that he let her know about future teaching sessions ahead of time so she could adjust his schedule, and hinted at organizing a concert in Shrek City. Lei agreed and accepted her proposal. Xuan Yu and his team received a generous bonus from the exchange center, which added to their previous earnings. With this extra money, the team built up a large amount. Each member, including Xuan Yu's classmates, worked hard to improve their skills. Some even began making battle armor as they pushed their limits. In the meditation room, Xuan Yu was deeply focused on his cultivation. Even with his efforts, he felt a problem with his soul power, as if an invisible wall was blocking his progress. He wondered if his meridians were at their limit, making it hard for him to turn life energy into soul power. This realization frustrated him because he couldn't use his soul power or bloodline power effectively. Then he had an idea. He remembered that the Dragon God transformation had almost used up his bloodline power. Maybe this power could help him overcome his current limits. He closed his eyes and accepted that a breakthrough might not come soon. He decided to use the Dragon God transformation. The 9-colored gemstone on him began to glow brightly. As the gemstone shone beautifully, Xuan Yu felt the life energy around him being pulled in and changed by the Dragon God transformation. It was like his bloodline power and soul power were combining into one strong force. The feeling of blockage in his soul power grew stronger, and the increasing pressure made him more and more stressed. He pushed himself to break through his current state. A powerful wave of energy burst from him and filled his room. When the energy settled, he took a deep breath and saw a purple ring surrounding him. He realized he had made a breakthrough. His body seemed to change as it unlocked new potential. The third soul ring that appeared was purple, just as he had hoped. He got excited as he looked forward to discovering the new abilities of his third soul skill. Xuan Yu's heart swelled with joy as he realized he had finally gotten the third soul ring he had been hoping for. Excited to find out what his new third soul skill could do, he watched the green light circling in his palm and wondered what hidden power it held. As the energy flowed through him in different directions, it felt new and thrilling. He sensed the air around him filled with a sense of freedom and joy, and he smiled as he felt his body grow lighter, almost weightless. He closed his eyes and let the feeling wash over him. He became certain that it must be the wind element. He then realized with delight that his first 2 soul rings had also been improved, with all 3 now glowing with powerful energy. Even his spiritual power had increased more than he expected. He was happy to think that, even though his progress in cultivation had been slower than others, once he made a breakthrough, his strength would grow much more. He stretched his body and smiled as he thought about the possibility of reaching his 4th ring someday. If all 4 rings turned into 10,000-year-old black lights, it would be exciting, and he eagerly looked forward to that day. Over the next month, Xuan Yu and his friends worked hard on their cultivation, each trying to improve their skills and understanding. They saw clear progress as they made significant gains in their training. However, a new problem started to emerge. A shortage of essential supplies began to affect their training and daily lives. Resources became scarce, and they struggled to keep up with basic needs. As they realized they couldn't keep going like this for long, Xuan Yu felt the pressure to find a solution. He began to think of ways to earn the money they urgently needed. At the bustling auction, Tang Yugi sat quietly, her thoughts drifting back to their previous encounter with Xuan Yu's team. A slight frown appeared on her face as she remembered the match. Even though they lost, she didn't believe they were outclassed. It must have been luck, not skill. She assured herself that if it hadn't been for Hui, the outcome might have been different. Suddenly, she heard a soft rustling behind her and looked back. There were Lan Xuanyu and Yuanin Hui standing behind her seat. Hui suggested to Xuanyu that they should sit there. With a quiet sigh, she turned her attention back to the auction and thought to herself that it was those 2 again. As the auction items were being bid on, Lei struggled to hide his excitement. He sadly admitted that he wanted to buy something, but his funds were not enough. Xuan Yu reminded him that it was better not to think about buying things when they couldn't even cover their living expenses. Hui sighed heavily and added that a man without money was no man at all. Lei turned to Hui and joked that his manliness was fading and called him a resilient rose. Hui got really mad and they started wrestling. In the middle of their fight, Hui told Lei to get lost while Lei laughed and called out to Yuge for help, as Hui was being too harsh on him. Yuge glanced over and said it was clear they were low on money. Lei acted sad and said it should have been obvious. Then she offered them another chance with a new fight in the Doluo world, but with higher stakes. The bet would be 10 yellow insignias, which were 2 million coins. Lei and Hui Hui were shocked and looked at her. Lei then turned to Xuanyu at the mention of the huge bet. Xuanyu, on the other hand, stayed calm and said they couldn't afford it and didn't even have battle armor. Yug said it was fine. Her team won't use battle armor either, and they didn't have to pay all at once. They could settle it within a year if needed. Xuanyu asked why Yug wanted another fight. She said it was a chance for his team to earn money and for hers to prove themselves. Xuanyu looked at Yug and saw the determination in her eyes. A smile appeared on his lips as he noted that she seemed eager to fight them. She quickly lost patience and asked if he was in or not. Xuanyu calmly replied that it wasn't worth risking their reputation for just 10 yellow insignias. They had already won last time. His words made her angry, and she wondered how someone so young could have such a sharp tongue. She demanded to know what he wanted. Xuanyu grinned and suggested 20 yellow insignias, but if they lost, they would only owe her 10. Also, no battle armor would be allowed. Lei, who was nearby, grabbed Xuanyu's sleeve, laughed, and praised him for his cleverness. He then asked if he could join them too. Before Xuanyu could reply, Hui Hui firmly said no and insisted that they didn't need any more people. Yug listened and thought about it, thinking that if this chubby troublemaker joined, 20 yellow insignias might be worth it. After a moment, she agreed to Xuanyu's terms, 20 insignias, but Qianlei had to join them. She suggested making it a 6-on-6 match, as she already calculated that it would give her team a better chance. Lei clung to Xuanyu, happy like a little brother, and insisted on joining the fight. Xuanyu nodded and agreed. He said they would have the battle in the Duluo world 1 week from that day, with Shrek as the judge. Lei's excitement grew as he did the math. 20 yellow insignias split among 6 meant 3 for each, which could last for 2 weeks if they were careful. Hui Hui also got excited and said he had wanted to buy the Millennium Purple Leaf Fruit for ages. Xuanyu imagined that the insignias would be enough for a trip to Sea God Lake, while Feng thought a dragon bloodbath would be a great treat. Xu Xiu, on the other hand, was lost in thought as she pictured buying the mysterious Millennium Ice Grass. But while they were all caught up in their dreams, Munkin's voice brought them back to reality. She asked if they weren't worried about losing, confused by their confident talk about splitting the reward. Qianlei brushed off her concerns and assured her that with Xuanyu leading them, they had nothing to worry about. Xu Xiu backed him up and reminded them that under Xuanyu's leadership, they had never lost. Munkin reluctantly agreed too. Then she joked that if they lost, Hui Hui should be given to Tang Yuge. Hui Hui protested loudly and asked why he was the one picked. Lei laughed and teased him that since Yug was his sister, she wouldn't hurt him. Hui Hui, annoyed, told Lei to back off, while the others laughed.